"Ma'am, please step aside." The voice was calm, but firm. And in that exact moment, among the beeping luggage scanners, crying toddlers, and rolling suitcases, the entire TSA checkpoint froze. Not because of the woman, not even because of the little boy standing next to her, clutching a teddy bear in one hand and a cartoon-covered backpack in the other. No, it was because of the dog. The K9's name was Jet, a sleek, black German shepherd with eyes sharp as glass and a jaw strong. Enough to stop a grown man in his tracks. He wasn't barking wildly or lunging. This was no ordinary dog noise. This was controlled, focused. Jet stood stock still, ears perked, nose aimed directly at the child's backpack. Then in one sudden motion he barked, loud, sharp. Once, then again, and again. Passengers turned. Security personnel stiffened. And the woman, her name on the boarding pass said Sarah Collins, clutched the boy tighter. "He's just scared of dogs," she said quickly, stepping forward. "Right, Danny?" But the boy didn't answer. He looked up at the dog, then down at the floor. Officer Daniels, Jet's handler, didn't move. His eyes were on the woman. His hand rested lightly on the leash, but he didn't need to pull it. Jet had already made his decision. This wasn't about fear. It was about something inside that backpack. It was supposed to be just another routine Thursday morning at Dallas-Fort Worth International. A long line of travelers, business people scrolling through emails, families herding kids with juice boxes, TSA workers half into their second coffee. But trained eyes knew better. Officer Daniels had been working with Jet for over 3 years, and in that time he'd learned one truth. The dog never barked for nothing. "Let's have a quick look," Daniels said, forcing a friendly tone. Sarah hesitated. "We're already late for our flight." Daniels nodded. "Won't take long." She gave a tight smile and stepped to the side. The boy followed silently. Still no eye contact, no words. Daniels crouched next to Jet, giving a quiet command. The dog sat, calm, alert, locked in. A nearby officer retrieved the small, brightly colored backpack. Paw Patrol, well worn, no apparent signs of danger. Inside were crayons, a small notebook, an unopened granola bar, and something else, a folded piece of paper. Daniels reached in and slowly opened it. It was a birth certificate. The name at the top, Daniel Vega. Mother's name, Marissa Vega. Daniels looked up. "You said his name was Danny, right?" Sarah's smile returned. "Yes." He held up the paper. "Because this says Daniel, and the mother's name isn't Sarah Collins." She blinked. "That's my sister," she said after a pause. "She passed away. I'm his guardian now." Her voice was calm, a little too calm, and still the boy said nothing. They moved the two to a side room for further screening. The other passengers returned to the line, murmuring, phones out, catching bits and pieces. But the moment was gone. The threat had been paused, or so, they thought. Daniels and Jet entered the interview room, a simple gray space with 2 chairs, 1 table, and a security camera tucked in the corner. Sarah sat with her purse clutched to her chest. The boy sat beside her, legs swinging just above the floor. "Can I ask how you two know each other?" Daniels said, pulling up a chair. "As I said, I'm his aunt." "Do you have custody papers?" "I wasn't expecting to need them. We're just flying to New Mexico for a family gathering." Daniels nodded. "Understandable." He turned to Jet and gave a subtle hand signal. The dog circled once, then sat beside the boy. "Not near Sarah." "Does he talk much?" Daniels asked casually. "He's shy, around strangers." Jet leaned forward and sniffed the boy's backpack again. The boy's eyes flicked toward him. Just for a second, and something shifted. In that blink, Daniels saw it, recognition, not of fear, not of surprise, of relief. If stories like this move you, where animals become unexpected heroes, be sure to subscribe to Heroes for Animals right now. These are true tales of loyalty, bravery, and instinct that you won't find anywhere else. Daniels stood and stepped out of the room for a moment. Outside, he quickly pulled up the Department of Child Services database and entered the boy's name, Daniel Vega. Age 4. Reported missing 7 weeks ago. Last seen in San Antonio, TX. He stared at the screen, heart rate rising. The case was still open, the alert still active. The mother, Marissa Vega, had made multiple public statements. One even aired on national news. This wasn't her sister. There was no record of guardianship. No adoption, no court papers, no nothing. He stepped back into the room. "Ma'am, can I see your ID?" Sarah didn't flinch. She opened her wallet and handed it over. It read, Sarah Collins, photo matched. Everything looked fine, except now Daniels knew it was likely a stolen identity. Or forged. He didn't say a word, just looked at the boy. "What's your name, buddy?" he asked gently. The boy looked at him, then at Jet. "Daniel," he whispered. "But she says don't tell." Daniels exhaled slowly. There it was. The room shifted after that. More officers were called in. Sarah's phone was confiscated. Her story began unraveling the moment anyone tugged at the threads. "No, I'm not his mother. But I saved him," she cried at one point. "You don't know what he was living through." There was no evidence of abuse in the reports, only a custody dispute that had never gone to court. Daniels wasn't a judge, but he knew something else. The kid wasn't safe with her. And Jet had known that before any of them did. When the boy was finally brought into another room for a full wellness check, he reached back and tried to hold Jet's paw. Jet sat perfectly still, letting the child press his hand gently onto that thick black fur. No bark, no growl, just presence. A quiet kind of protection only animals seem to know how to give. Later that day, while Sarah Collins was placed under arrest, and the real mother, Marissa Vega, was contacted by authorities, Daniels sat in the empty terminal, watching Jet rest at his feet. "He never gets it wrong," he told a young officer nearby. "Not once." The younger man nodded. "How did he know?" Daniels smiled faintly. "I think he listens to what people don't say, and what kids are too afraid to." The two watched as a cleaning crew passed, resetting the chairs and sweeping away the morning's chaos. Tomorrow, it would all look like just another day. But for one boy, and the dog who refused to let silence win, it had been anything but ordinary. There's a moment in every investigation where things either start to make sense or fall completely apart. For Officer Daniels, that moment came in the form of a cheap prepaid cell phone. It was pulled from Sarah Collins' purse after her arrest. At first glance it was nothing, scratched, low battery, no SIM card, but when it extracted the data they found photos, not vacation selfies, not family portraits. Photos of Daniel Vega, dozens of them, taken in motel rooms, gas station bathrooms, airport waiting areas. In each one the little boy looked, quiet. Too quiet. Sometimes he was staring at the floor, sometimes at a blank wall. In none of the pictures was he smiling, and in none of them was Sarah visible. Not even once. They ran facial recognition on Sarah's ID. The match was weak. TSA. Surveillance footage confirmed what Daniels had already suspected. She was using a fake name. She'd purchased the plane ticket in cash 2 days earlier under Sarah Collins, but that wasn't who she really was. She had no matching driver's license in Texas, no vehicle registration, no home address, no tax records, no voting registration. For someone supposedly raising a child, she didn't exist. That's when Daniels called in the state investigator. "We're looking at a kidnapping, right?" the man asked, flipping through the preliminary case report. "Worse," Daniels said. "She was planning to vanish." Meanwhile, in the child interview room across the hall, a trauma specialist knelt beside Daniel, offering a small juice box and a coloring book. The boy was cautious, but not closed off. He didn't speak much, at least not in the beginning. But when he was alone with the therapist, things began to shift. "Do you know your mom's name?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Can you tell me?" He shook his head no. But he picked up the crayon and slowly, carefully wrote the letters Marissa, then in shaky handwriting, Mommy. The specialist smiled. "You did really well." Then came the question she'd been trained to ask gently. "Do you feel safe with the lady who brought you here?" Daniel hesitated, and then, in the smallest voice imaginable, he whispered, "She makes me hide." In the days that followed, Daniels helped coordinate with local law enforcement in San Antonio. What they found there made his stomach turn. The woman's real name was Teresa Lang. She'd worked for the Vega family as a live-in nanny for nearly 6 months. Her background check at the time had come back clean. No prior arrests, no mental health red flags, no relatives listed. Just a soft-spoken woman in her early 30s with 2 letters of reference and a quiet demeanor. Marissa Vega had hired her to help care for Daniel after her divorce. A busy pediatric nurse with long shifts, she needed the help. And for the first few months, everything seemed fine. Then Teresa started pushing boundaries. It began with small things, a change in the child's clothes that hadn't been approved, a missed pediatric appointment. A neighbor overhearing Teresa scold Daniel a little too harshly. Then came the paranoia. She told Marissa that she shouldn't trust the neighbors, that Daniel's teachers were too handsy, that men at the grocery store were eyeing him. Eddie's? First, Marissa thought it was overprotectiveness, but one day she came home early and found all the curtains drawn. Daniel was sitting under a blanket in the closet. Teresa claimed they were playing hide-and-seek. Marissa didn't believe her. She fired Teresa that night. 2 weeks later, Daniel disappeared from his daycare center. The cameras outside the building had been mysteriously disabled that morning. There were no witnesses. Until now, there had been no trace. Daniel sat quietly in the break room with a coffee in hand, staring at the file. He'd worked dozens of child welfare cases. Drugs, neglect, trafficking. But this felt personal, intimate, twisted. And the worst part? It had nearly worked. Teresa had driven from city to city, staying off-grid, avoiding credit cards, not leaving digital footprints. She kept Daniel, hidden during the day, traveling only at night, but she made one mistake. Flying. She was supposed to take a bus out of Texas, but according to her interrogation transcript, Daniel had gotten sick. He'd developed a high fever and she panicked. She needed to move fast. That's when she bought the one-way plane ticket to New Mexico and walked straight into the arms of a German shepherd named Jet. While law enforcement built their case, Daniels visited the Child Services safe house where Daniel was temporarily staying. He wasn't allowed to bring Jet inside. Regulations, but that didn't stop Daniel from running to the window the second he spotted them outside. The boy pressed, both palms to the glass. Daniels gave a wave and Jet sat obediently beside him, tail wagging once. One of the counselors walked out. "He keeps asking about the dog," she said. "Keeps calling him Jet Jet." Daniels chuckled. "He named him? He remembers him. Says the dog told the police he was in trouble." She paused. "He also said the dog is his best friend." Daniels looked down at Jet. The dog didn't react, just kept watching the window, like he was waiting for the next order. 2 days later, the real turning point arrived. Marissa Vega flew in from San Antonio. She was met by a federal escort and brought straight to the facility. When she stepped into the child-safe visitation room, she was trembling. Daniel was brought in moments later. He stopped in the doorway. Marissa took one step forward. The boy froze. His lip quivered. Then, suddenly, he ran, arms wide, crying, "Mommy!" Marissa dropped to her knees and caught him mid-run, sobbing as she wrapped him in her arms. Daniels watched through the observation glass. Jet sat beside him, still, silent, and somehow smiling. The trial for Teresa Lang was set to begin within the month. Multiple counts of kidnapping, child endangerment, identity fraud. Her defense attorney tried to spin it. She believed she was protecting him, but no one was buying it. The court ordered psychological evaluations. The diagnosis? Delusional disorder, possibly untreated schizophrenia, likely worsened by isolation and obsession with the child. Marissa decided not to press for a harsh sentence. "She's sick," she told reporters, "but that doesn't mean she should have taken my son." What mattered now was Daniel's healing, and in a strange twist of fate, it all began with a bark. When Daniels brought Jet back to the precinct that night, There was a small ceremony waiting. Local news cameras, a handful of officers, a medal. The mayor's assistant gave a short speech about bravery, instinct, and duty, but Daniels didn't say much. He knelt beside Jet, scratched behind his ear, and whispered, "You did good, partner." The next day, Heroes for Animals ran a segment about it online. K9 hero prevents airport kidnapping. German Shepherd's bark saves 4-year-old boy. It got over 2 million views in 3 days. But to Jet, none of that mattered. He just liked the part where the boy came back to visit, where the boy knelt on the sidewalk and wrapped his arms around his neck, where he whispered again, "Jet, Jet, my hero." And for once the barking stopped. It was the kind of autumn morning where the Texas sun still burned bright, but the wind carried the faintest hint of change. Leaves didn't exactly turn gold in this part of the country, but there was a shift in the air, just enough to make you believe things could start over. For Marissa Vega and her son, Daniel, everything had to start over. The weeks following their reunion were filled with appointments, child psychologists, legal counselors, trauma specialists. Marissa took leave from work. She barely slept. Every time Daniel had a nightmare, and there were many, she was there before he could scream, just holding him, whispering that he was home. But recovery doesn't follow a schedule, especially not for a 4-year-old who'd been stolen from everything he knew. Daniel barely spoke. He didn't like leaving the house. Crowded rooms made him panic. Unexpected noises made him cry. Even sunlight seemed too bright. The only thing that brought a flicker of calm, one name, Jet Jet. Marissa first noticed it in the second week after Daniel's return. They were in the backyard, just the two of them, trying to plant marigolds. Her son sat cross-legged in the dirt, listless, pressing his thumb into the soil. She asked gently, "Do you want to help Mommy dig?" He didn't answer, but then out of nowhere he mumbled, "Jet Jet likes dirt." Marissa froze. "You remember Jet?" she asked softly. He nodded. "He smelled my backpack." She laughed, a raw sound full of heartbreak and hope. "Yes, baby, he saved you." Daniel smiled. It was the first time since the airport Officer Daniels had been hesitant at first. K9s weren't therapy dogs. They weren't trained to comfort. They were trained to detect, to pursue, to protect. But Jet had always been different. He had patience, awareness, intuition. So when Daniels got a call from the Vega family therapist asking if Jet could come by for a supervised visit, he didn't even blink. "Tell us when." They met in a fenced community park on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. No crowds, no cameras, just Daniels, Jet, Marissa, and Daniel. The boy spotted the dog from across the grass and froze. His breathing quickened, his hands clenched into fists. Daniels was about to pull Jet back when the boy suddenly ran, not away, but forward, straight to the dog. He fell to his knees and hugged Jet's neck, burying his face into the thick black fur. Jet didn't move, didn't bark, didn't even wag his tail. He just stood there letting it happen, letting the boy decide when to let go. And when Daniel did, he looked up at Officer Daniels and whispered, "Can he come home with us?" It wasn't legal, of course. Jet was still an active duty K9. He belonged to the department, but exceptions exist when the right people care enough to make them happen. Within a week, Daniels helped file paperwork for an honorary community therapy partnership. The city greenlit the visits. Jet would remain officially on duty, but authorized for special appearances at the Vega residence under supervision. They called it Project Jet Jet, and for Daniel, it changed everything. Marissa documented the transformation in her journal. Week 3. Daniel brushed Jet's coat today. Every stroke was gentle. He whispered while he did it. I couldn't hear what he said, but I think he was telling him secrets. Week 4. He followed Jet around the yard for almost an hour. I let him go. Just let him be a boy again. Doctor, he asked me if dogs have dreams. I said yes, he said. I hope Jet Jet dreams about saving more kids. I almost cried. At night, Daniel slept with a stuffed dog he named Jet Jr. By day, he started drawing again, stick figures of himself, and Jet going on adventures through jungles on pirate ships even to the moon. Each drawing had the same caption at the bottom, carefully written in crayon. Jet always finds the truth. Meanwhile, Daniels found himself unexpectedly pulled into the boy's life. Not just as a cop or handler, but as a friend. He visited, weekly. Sometimes he brought Jet, sometimes not. They watched cartoons, played mini soccer, built Lego forts. It was odd, Daniels thought, how a 4-year-old could rebuild trust faster than most adults. Maybe it was because Daniel knew what it felt like to be lied to. He didn't have space for dishonesty anymore, only truth and dogs. At the department, Jet received a service commendation and a plaque that now hung in the main hallway. Reporters still called occasionally, wanting updates. Daniels declined most interviews. "This one's not for the press," he said. Still, a few weeks later, a local high school invited him and Jet to speak at their Heroes in Our Community assembly. Daniels didn't want to go, but Marissa encouraged him. "You don't know who might need to hear it," she said. There might be another Daniel sitting in that crowd. So he went. He told them the story, beginning to end. He kept it clean, simple, real. He didn't exaggerate, didn't dramatize. He let the silence speak where it needed to, and at the end, Jet did his favorite trick, sitting on command, then offering his paw. The gym erupted in applause. A teacher cried in the front row. Not long after, Daniels received a letter in the mail. It was from Daniel. He'd written it himself, with help, from Marissa. "Dear Officer Daniels, thank you for bringing Jet to me. He is my best friend. He helps me be brave. One day I want to be a helper like you. Love, Daniel." There was a drawing inside. Daniel, in a little police uniform, holding hands, with Jet, a sun overhead, a big smile. Daniels didn't cry. Not then. But he did take a long walk that night with Jet. No leash, just silence and stars. One evening, as the year wound down, Marissa invited Daniels over for Thanksgiving. "Just a small dinner," she said. "Nothing fancy." Daniel insisted on setting the table himself. He made place cards. Mommy, Jet, Mr. Daniels. They had turkey, mashed potatoes, canned cranberry sauce, the works. Daniel gave the toast. 4 words. "I'm happy I'm home." No one said anything for a moment. Marissa looked down, hiding tears. Daniels raised his glass of sweet tea. "To home," he said. Jet barked once. Perfect timing. Outside, the first true cold front had arrived. The wind shook the windows. A branch tapped against the roof. Inside, the warmth of the kitchen lights glowed. Daniel sat curled up with Jet by the fireplace, reading a book out loud, slowly sounding out each word. Daniel stood near the doorway, sipping coffee, watching, quietly. Jet, the boy read aloud, was brave and strong and kind. He paused, then added, off script, just like real heroes. By Christmas, things finally felt normal, or at least something close to it. Marissa and Daniel had settled into a rhythm, morning waffles, bedtime stories, therapy sessions, and backyard races with Jet on weekends. Laughter had returned to their home, tentative at first, then bolder. Daniel was no longer afraid of loud noises or shadows in the hallway. He sang songs in the car. He smiled in his sleep. And Jet, the black-coated hero of it all, remained a steady presence. His visits were regular now, so regular the neighborhood kids had started calling him the sheriff. But just as healing began to feel safe, the letter came. It arrived on a rainy Tuesday, postmarked from El Paso, official envelope, courthouse seal. Marissa opened it with one hand while stirring spaghetti sauce with the other. And then her breath caught. She read the first line twice, then again. By the third read, she had to sit down. Petition for emergency custody review. Filed by Amanda Louise Carter, biological maternal grandmother of minor, Daniel Vega Grounds, alleged parental negligence. resulting in child abduction. It made no sense. None at all. Amanda Carter had never been part of Daniel's life. She had cut off contact with Marissa years ago after a painful falling out. Marissa had raised Daniel on her own, without support, without judgment. And now, out of nowhere, this woman was accusing her of negligence, that she was somehow responsible for Daniel being kidnapped, that she was unfit. Marissa sat in silence at the kitchen table as Daniel built a Lego tower on the rug behind her. The scent of basil and tomato sauce filled the air, but suddenly everything tasted like metal. Her mind raced. Was this real? Could this happen? She called her lawyer within the hour. The answer was complicated. Yes, it's real, the attorney confirmed. And yes, she has a legal right to petition. Marissa didn't have a criminal record. She wasn't being charged with anything. But in the state of Texas, a relative, even one with no recent contact, can file for custody if they believe the child's welfare has been endangered. Teresa Lang's abduction of Daniel had left a paper trail. And even though Marissa was the victim, the law didn't always see it that way. She's claiming you failed to protect him, the lawyer said, and that she's the better option for his long-term care. It felt like a punch to the gut. After everything, after all the therapy, the sleepless nights, the prayers, the slow, tender work of rebuilding her child's trust, now someone wanted to take him away. Marissa told Daniel gently. He didn't understand most of it, just that someone he didn't know wanted him to leave. He looked confused, then scared, then furious. I'm not going, he cried. I won't go. I won't leave Jet. He slammed his little fists onto the kitchen table. Marissa reached for him, but he pulled away, and for the first time in weeks, she saw the old fear return to his eyes. She called Officer Daniels the next morning. Daniels wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't even technically part of the case anymore. But the moment Marissa told him what was happening, he was in his car. He and Jet arrived within the hour. Daniel ran out the front door, straight into Jet's side. No words, just clutching, his fur holding on. Inside, Marissa explained everything. Daniels listened, arms crossed, jaw tight. She's never even called, Marissa said, tears brimming. Never once asked about Daniel, but now she wants him? Daniels nodded slowly. I'll make a few calls. That night, he reached out to his contacts in family services. He asked questions. He pulled reports, and what he found was troubling. Amanda Carter had a record, 2 counts of misdemeanor neglect in the 1990s during Marissa's childhood, unsubstantiated, never pursued in court. But they were on file. There were no current charges, no red flags. But still, it told a different story than the one she was trying to paint in court. The custody hearing was set for February. In the weeks leading up, Marissa met with child advocates, filled out statements, and worked with Daniel's therapist to prepare a testimony if necessary. Daniel's drawing tablet became his sanctuary. He filled it with pictures of his house, his mom, and always Jet. In one, he drew a courtroom. Him, his mom, Jet, in a tiny suit and tie, standing guard. When Marissa saw it, she laughed through her tears. You think Jet should be our lawyer? She asked. Daniel nodded. He always knows who's lying. The courtroom was beige, stiff, cold. Amanda Carter sat at the opposite table, dressed in pearls and a sharp gray blazer. Her eyes were unreadable. She claimed she only wanted what was best for her grandson. The state representative presented the facts of the kidnapping, the legal gaps, and the trauma involved. Then it was Marissa's turn. She didn't cry. She didn't accuse. She simply told the truth, that she'd done her best, that she'd trusted someone she shouldn't have, that she fought like hell to find her son again, and that she loved him with everything she had. Daniel didn't have to testify. His drawings, his therapist's report, and letters from his teachers were entered into evidence. And then, just before closing arguments, Marissa's lawyer introduced something new, a short video. It showed Daniel playing in the backyard, running, laughing, calling for Jet, and then curling up beside him in the grass, whispering, "Thank you for finding me." The room was silent. Even Amanda Carter looked away. The judge took a recess before ruling. Daniels waited outside with Jet, pacing the hallway. He didn't know what to expect. Justice didn't always look like it should. But when Marissa stepped out of the courtroom with Daniel in her arms, her face said it all. They'd won. Outside, under a pale winter sun, Daniel knelt in the grass. Jet came to his side. "I told you," Daniel whispered. "You always find the truth." No one in the Vega household was ready for what came next. Not the camera crews, not the national coverage, and certainly not Marissa. What started as a heartwarming local news story, K9 dog saves kidnapped boy, quickly exploded across the internet. A short clip of Daniel hugging Jet after the custody hearing was shared by a teacher's aide on Facebook. Within 48 hours, it had over 3 million views. By the end of the week, they were trending on Twitter. America had found its latest miracle story. And for a little boy who once feared his own shadow, Daniel Vega had become a symbol of survival. At first, it was sweet. Letters poured in from across the country, handwritten notes, children's drawings, even boxes of dog treats addressed to Jet Jet the Brave. People sent stuffed animals. One woman mailed a crocheted replica of Jet complete with badge and collar. News stations called daily. Daytime talk shows offered free trips and hotel stays just to get Marissa and Daniel on camera. But Marissa hesitated. She wasn't looking for fame. She was just trying to get through the day. Daniel was healing, yes, but he was still only 4. Still waking up some nights crying, still asking why Teresa had taken him, still checking to see if his mom was home even when she was just in the next room. The media attention, however well-intentioned, felt like a storm building around them, and storms always come with danger. One morning in early March, Marissa opened the front door to find 2 men in suits standing on her porch, not police, not journalists, just polite smiles and business cards. They introduced themselves as producers from a streaming platform. "We're developing a docuseries," one said. "True stories of survival, resilience, and the heroes who step in when no one else will." They wanted to feature Daniel, full interviews, archival footage, a possible reenactment, and of course, Jet. "America loves dogs," the other added, with a smile. Marissa didn't respond right away. She listened, she nodded. Then she asked them to leave their information and promised to think about it. When the door closed behind them, she locked it twice. That evening, she called Officer Daniels. "You ever get the feeling people only care about your story when it's shiny?" He chuckled softly. "More than I care to admit." "What would you do?" He paused. "I'd ask Jet." She laughed. "He doesn't talk much." "No," Daniel said, "but he knows things." The next time Jet visited, Daniel was quiet. Not withdrawn, just thoughtful. He sat on the floor beside the dog, petting his ears gently. Then he looked up at his mom. "Why do people want to see us?" "Because they think you're brave," Marissa said honestly. Daniel blinked. "But I didn't save anyone." Marissa knelt beside him. "You came back, that's brave." Daniel looked down. Jet saved me." Marissa smiled. "Yes, he did." Against her instincts, Marissa agreed to a single interview, just one, with a national morning show. It would be pre-recorded in their home, minimal crew, no press junket. She wanted to set the record straight. Not every rescue looks like the movies. Sometimes it's quiet, fragile, complicated. Sometimes the hero isn't wearing a cape. Sometimes he just has 4 legs and a steady heart. The day of the shoot, Daniel wore his favorite shirt, navy blue with little silver stars. Jet sat beside him on the couch, wearing his service vest. The interview was simple, respectful. The host asked Marissa about the kidnapping, the custody hearing, the recovery. Then he turned to Daniel. "Do you remember what happened that day at the airport?" Daniel thought for a long time. Then he nodded. "I was scared, but Jet wasn't." "And what do you think makes Jet special?" Daniel didn't miss a beat. "He can tell when someone's lying." The host smiled. "That's quite a talent." Daniel looked serious. He's better than a lie detector. The segment aired a week later. Viewers were moved. Donations were made to local K9 units across the country. Jet received an honorary certificate from the National Service Dog Foundation. And Marissa? She got more phone calls. A lot more. Some were kind, some were creepy. One woman insisted she was Daniel's real spiritual mother. Another claimed she was Teresa Lang's cousin and said Daniel owed her family an apology. Marissa disconnected the landline, blocked half a dozen numbers. Increased their home security. The attention was no longer flattering. It was suffocating. Meanwhile, Daniels noticed something changing in Jet. Not his behavior, not exactly, but a kind of fatigue. Canines don't show stress the way humans do, but handlers know. The longer stares, the slower reactions, the occasional moments where Jet just sat still, staring into space like he was trying to process something that never quite fit. The department offered an evaluation. The vet said Jet was healthy, but aging. Not old, but no longer the same spry dog who'd graduated at the top of T. His class 3 years earlier. Daniels knew what it meant. Retirement was on the horizon. Most canines retire at age 7 or 8. Jet was 6, but he'd been through more than most dogs twice his age. Daniels sat with him on the precinct steps that evening, just the two of them. "You're still sharp," he said, "but maybe it's time." Jet rested his head on Daniels's boot. He'd already made the choice. The next day, Daniels submitted the paperwork. Jet would be retired from active duty by the end of the month. He'd still live with Daniels, still visit the Vegas, still be loved. But he wouldn't wear the vest anymore, wouldn't respond to emergencies. He'd earned the right to just be. When Daniel found out, he cried, "Is Jet okay?" he asked, voice breaking. Daniels nodded. "He's more than okay. He's ready to rest." "Does that mean he won't come back?" Daniels crouched beside him. "He'll always come back, just not with the sirens." Daniel thought for a long time, then he said, "Can we have a party?" "A party?" "For Jet. A hero party." Daniel smiled. "Absolutely." The retirement ceremony was held in the community park where Daniel had first reunited with the dog. Simple, warm, joyful. Daniel wore a sheriff's badge pinned to his shirt. Jet had a new collar, deep red leather, embossed with the words, "Forever. Hero." Marissa spoke. Daniel spoke. Even the mayor showed up. But the highlight? Daniel stepped up to the little podium, microphone barely reaching his chin. He held a piece of paper in both hands. Jet saved me," he said, voice clear and small. "He didn't have to. He could have let me go, but he didn't, and now I'm not scared anymore. Because he gave me my mom back, and my smile, and my home." He paused. "And when I grow up, I'm gonna help people, just like him." He looked down at the dog beside him. "Thank you, Jet." The crowd stood and clapped. Jet wagged his tail, and for once he barked. Not in warning, not in alarm, but in celebration. The kind of bark that said, "I'd do it all again." Spring came slow that year. Texas wildflowers dotted the highways, and the air started carrying warmth again. The kind of warmth that doesn't just sit on your skin, but sinks in deep, reminding you that things can bloom, even after winter. Daniel. Vega had bloomed too. He wasn't the same boy who clung to his mother's hand at the airport, trembling and silent. He wasn't the child who screamed at shadows or hid under blankets when the doorbell rang. Now he ran barefoot through the backyard, jumping over flower beds and calling to squirrels. He played tag with the neighborhood kids. He rode his bike, still, with training wheels but faster each day. And every evening before dinner he sat beside a black German shepherd on the porch and talked. Stories, secrets, silly jokes. Jet never responded. Of course, but he always listened. Officially, Jet was retired, but someone forgot to tell him that. He still showed up at community events with Officer Daniels wearing a new bandana that said, "Retired but still watching." He still made his rounds to the Vega household every other day. He still had his patrol spots. His favorite tree, the fire hydrant on 3rd Street, and the bakery that always had a dog biscuit waiting behind the counter. Daniels joked that retirement had made Jet more of a celebrity than ever. People stopped them in the street. Kids asked for photos. One time, a man handed Daniels a $50 bill and said, "That dog, he gave me hope." Daniels tried to give the money back. The man refused. "Keep doing what you're doing," he said. "The world needs more stories like his." Meanwhile, the Vegas found peace. Not perfection, not forgetfulness, but peace. Marissa went back to work part-time, returning to the pediatric clinic where her co-workers welcomed her with open arms. Daniel started preschool again. He even made a friend, a boy named Tyler who loved dinosaurs and hated broccoli. The two were inseparable. They built Lego cities together and made up songs about dragons and jet-powered dogs. Every Wednesday after school, Daniel would tell Tyler, Jet is my hero." And Tyler would say, "Yeah, but does he do tricks?" To which Daniel always replied, "He finds the truth, that's better than tricks." Then, one warm May afternoon, something happened. It started with Jet slowing down, not dramatically, just subtle changes. He hesitated before going upstairs. He took longer to get up after naps. He didn't bark as much, didn't eat as fast. Daniels took him to the vet. Arthritis, mild hip dysplasia, aging, they said. "It's not urgent," the vet reassured him. "But he's not a young pup anymore. He'll need rest, fewer visits, more care." Daniels nodded. He understood. The news hit Marissa and Daniel hard. Daniel cried that night. "Is Jet gonna leave?" Marissa hugged him tight. "Not yet, but he needs quiet and love." Daniel wiped his nose. "Then I'll be quiet, and I'll love him more." The family made adjustments. Jet got a new orthopedic bed. Daniel moved his own mattress next to it and began sleeping there on weekends just to keep him company. He brushed Jet's fur every night. He brought him snacks, soft ones that didn't hurt his teeth. He even made a sign for the front door. "Shh, hero resting." The whole neighborhood respected it. One Saturday morning in June, Daniels and Jet visited the local elementary school for career day. They didn't stay long, but the kids were overjoyed. They had posters. They asked questions. They called Jet the real Paw Patrol. Before leaving, the principal handed Daniels a folder. Inside were letters written by second graders. "Thank you for saving that little boy. I want to be a dog hero when I grow up." Jet is cooler than Superman. Daniel drew his own letter and gave it to Daniels personally. It read, "You're the best partner Jet ever had. Thanks for sharing him." Daniels kept it in his glove compartment. Still does. As the summer deepened, Jet began moving slower. He napped more, didn't chase birds anymore, didn't get up when the mailman came. But he was content, surrounded, loved. Then, one night in late August, something changed. Jet didn't eat dinner. He didn't get up for his evening walk. He lay on the porch breathing slow, eyes half open. Daniel curled beside him, whispering into his ear. Daniel sat close by, hand on his back, the vet was called. She came gently, quietly. Everyone understood what was happening. Jet didn't whimper. He didn't struggle. He just looked up once, at Daniel, at Marissa, at Daniels. And then, as the sun set behind the trees, he exhaled and let go. The funeral was small, a quiet ceremony in the backyard beneath Daniel's favorite tree. They placed Jet in a handmade wooden box. Daniel helped paint it, with blue stars and gold paw prints and the words, Jet, finder of truth, keeper of hearts. Daniel said a few words. He did what none of us could. He saw what others missed. He barked when it mattered. Marissa said, he protected more than a child. He protected the hope inside him. Daniel simply said, he was my best friend. And, somehow, that was more than enough. Months passed. The world moved on, as it always does. But Jet's legacy didn't fade. The local police department created a new K-9 training scholarship in his name, the JET Initiative, aimed at encouraging trauma-informed handlers. A children's book author reached out to Marissa and asked to write Daniel and Jet's story. The first copy arrived in November. Daniel flipped through the pages, wide-eyed. On the last page was an illustration of a little boy and a German shepherd sitting under a tree. Above it, the final line read, "Some dogs chase criminals, some dogs guard homes, but every once in a while, a dog guards your soul." Daniel smiled. That's my Jet. Today, Daniel still sets out 2 bowls every morning, one for the new puppy they adopted in spring, Rusty, a goofy golden retriever who doesn't know how to sit still. The other bowl, he leaves it empty, but full of memory, just in case a hero stops by. Thank you for walking this emotional journey with us. Jet may be gone, but his story lives on, in every child who feels safer because someone stood up for them, and in every animal who reminds us that love doesn't always come with words. Now we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever met an animal who changed your life? Tell us in the comments, and if Jet's story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Heroes for Animals for more powerful true stories of courage, love, and second chances. Because sometimes, the quietest bark is the one that saves a life.